Hey guys, Jeff aka GCurse here with a quick review. This review is for the Transformers Age of the Primes Deluxe Class Venin. I have some thoughts that I would like to share about this figure, so let's get right to that, shall we? Sometimes there are figures that are best when they are left in the box, and I hate to say it, this figure is actually one of those examples. While a lot of people find being faithful to the source material is essential to the product that they buy, I like to think that sometimes there is a time that being faithful to the source material can actually be too hindrance to the actual product. The one issue I have with this figure is actually the placement of the wings. If you were to go by the instructions that Hasbro includes, they prefer that you have the wings angled upwards. However, this causes a massive issue with the articulation for the figure, especially when it comes to being able to use the arms of Venom. It really just hinders and makes it impossible to do everything that this figure can do with his arms. I understand that this is faithful to the source material. However, I would have been okay if they actually made the wings detachable. That way it would actually open up a lot more articulation and mobility with the arms. I am reluctant to give faithfulness to source material causing articulation issues. I am willing to give that a very slight pass if I have to. However, one thing I will not give a pass to is poor QC or quality control, which this figure actually has an issue with, at least with my copy of this figure. I ran into a severe issue where the both hands just constantly cave in on itself. You try to get the hand into the right position and it will just literally cave into the forearm because of the fact that it needs to actually cave into the forearm to facilitate the transformation process. There is, at least with my figure, there is no like a tab or anything for the wrist hand assembly to be able to sit in and be secure. No, it just kind of literally just kind of hangs there. And if you try to do anything like say with his blaster, it causes the hand to, like I said before, it causes the hand to cave in, which it's kind of sad because you want to be able to do various things with the figure you paid good money on, and you can't because the hand constantly has a defect, basically. We are in the year 2025. This isn't 2010 to 2017, 18, where QC issues was still pretty prevalent with everything from Thrilling 30 all the way through the Prime Wars trilogy figures. You would think that even though they had QC issues, even in the War for Cybertron series, you would think that as we get further along in the years, that Hasbro would step up their quality control. You're telling me that somebody for Hasbro's QC team, you're telling me that they were interacting with this figure, they were transforming this figure, they were playing with the figure, they were putting the weapon in his hand, the hand would constantly cave in on itself, and you're telling me that QC saw this and they thought to themselves, hey, this is fine, this is no problem at all. I do not like that. I do not like that at all. Excuse me, sorry about that. I've even seen people, I think one of them was Patriot Prime Reviews, I think that's his name. The hand actually kept popping off, if I remember correctly. We are in the year 2025. You're telling me that Hasbro is too goddamn selfish and too goddamn cheap to just insert a rod through the wrist into the hand to prevent the hand from falling off? Come on, man. This is 2025. I expect better. And I also expect good quality control, considering that we are now having to pay higher prices for these figures. However, one of the most egregious issues with this figure, it isn't even the figure itself, it's the name, Venom. I originally heard this name when it was announced, and I thought my hearing was messing with me, but nope. Because apparently, for some stupid fucking reason, because Marvel has a character named Venom, we all of a sudden cannot have a character named Venom. Yeah, so what can we do? We'll rename it Venom. This is the stupidest fucking reason I've ever heard. It's about as stupid as renaming Reflector to Refractor because of trademark issues back in War for Cybertron Siege, or renaming Slag to Slug due to it being, basically a term that refers to a woman who is easygoing, I guess you could say. It's Venom, not Venom. It's Reflector, not Refractor, and it's Slag, not Slug. The one thing that makes me scratch my head is that there are people out there who believes that this is the best modern Insecticon that has been released for all of the Insecticons since the release of Kickback from Transformers Legacy, and it really kind of just confuses me. This figure is not bad if you are to compare it to figures like I mentioned before, Wheelie from Titans Return, or the Fossilizers from War for Cybertron Kingdom. This figure is leaps and bounds above those figures. However, this figure has its issues. Like I said, mainly the wings and the hands. If the wings were not an issue, this figure, yeah, I would say that this figure could have been the best Insecticon. But this figure just has two glowing issues, and to say that this figure is the best Insecticon, it kind of makes me kind of scratch my head. I'll be honest, I think Bombshell from Legacy Evolution, I think that could have been one of the best Insecticons. I know ultimately it is an issue of personal preference, but when you have a voice and you have, thousands of subscribers, it really, it falls upon you to be as honest as possible. And when you're saying literally this figure, which has its issues, is the best figure of its subgenre or its group or whatever you want to call it, it kind of really makes me kind of doubt what you're saying. Now, I've never really trusted Prime versus Prime. To me, he seems a little bit shady, if you ask me. And this is a weird take that he had to give, that this is the best. I'm sorry. I watched his video and he really plays up this figure, and I just can't help but wonder if he's playing up and hyping this figure that way, he can stay in Hasbro's good graces. We've heard it all, ladies and gentlemen. We've heard people believe that this guy gets his figures from either Hasbro as a under the table kind of review type person, or that he's even received these figures from less than legal methods. But I feel that no matter what, you should be totally honest when you're talking to your subscribers and you're reviewing a product. When you can literally have a product and it has a massive issue, it's not the best of anything then. It just isn't. It's just not. But yeah, overall, I like the figure. I just wish that more could have been done for it. When it comes to the Transformers Age of the Primes Deluxe Class Venin, is this a bad figure? Well, yes and no. I know that is a weird answer to give, but hear me out. Is this figure as bad as figures that are currently in my collection, such as dreadful fossilizers from the War for Cybertron Kingdom toy line? No, Venom is not as bad as those figures. However, whereas both Wheelie and the fossilizers, it could be chalked up to just a severe issue of QC, or even mold degradation, if you really want to say that. The issue with Venom is actually something even worse. Venom is, like I mentioned, he is a victim of being too reliant upon being faithful to the source material. It is to the point that if you go by the instructions that Hasbro provides, you lose at least 50% of articulation when it comes to the use of the arms for Venom. I feel that this is actually something even worse for Venom because of the fact, like I mentioned earlier in this review, basically somebody at Hasbro had to have interacted with this figure. They realized that this figure had an issue with the arms, or with the wings, and they still decided to push this product out as a competent figure. And I just cannot look past that. Like I mentioned, it would be different if this was just a QC issue. If you didn't have the issue with the wings and you simply had the issue with the hands, I would have been willing to give this figure a pass. I would have figured, okay, well, Hasbro cannot nail it every day of the week. They just can't. However, the fact that they released a product where basically the wings interrupt articulation. It isn't even like you can basically just kind of force the arms around the wings like you can with some other figures that are burdened by having either a cape or some sort of like large shoulder pads. You cannot just simply try to fidget the arm around unless you literally move the wings down. If you were to leave the wings up, you lose 50% of the articulation that this figure has for its arms. And I just cannot look past that. I'm sorry, I cannot. I like this figure. I like the concept. I think the figure is actually pretty unique in appearance. But just because I think it looks neat and I think its appearance is really unique, it does not give it a pass for such failure of being, what am I thinking of? Failure of a product overall, basically. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are back to where it all began. That's right. It is time for me to give you my final thoughts. And overall, this figure is competent. It is a nice figure. It is a very interesting figure. However, due to the issues that it has, I cannot, really just go all in and just really hype this figure. This figure has issues. This figure does have issues. I can't lie. For those who are just wanting a shelf piece, this is actually a nice shelf piece. Pose it in a way that you think would be best, put it on a shelf, and basically leave it to the end of time. However, if you are going to want to play with your figure, this is going to be one of those figures you're going to have to deal with a major issue with the wings, the hands, and even the legs on the back. If you're not careful, those legs that are on the back of Venom can really be a pain in the ass to work with. Other than that, everything else is just kind of a personal complaint of mine regarding, like, say, the name of this figure. It's Venom. It's Venom. Until I die after this review, I'm just going to refer to this figure as Venom. Because that's who this figure is. This figure is Venom. But yeah, so I guess that's that. If you want, you can always leave the figure in the box. If you leave the figure in the box, it looks really nice. It does look nice. It's just when you take it out of the package, that's when you really start to realize, oh my god, this figure has a lot of issues. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That was my quick review of the Transformers Age of the Primes Deluxe Class Venin. I hope you all have a great day. As always, if you like what you watch, feel free to click that subscribe button, click the like button, and I'll see you next time. My name is Jeff, aka GCurse. Wishing you all a great day, and stay safe, everybody. Peace out.